About 2 weeks ago, I talked to you about the importance of prioritizing your habits over your goals as a way to actually achieve your goals. And what I'd like to do in the next few videos is to actually talk to you about habits. How do you introduce a new habit effectively in a way that lasts? How do you also break a habit that no longer is serving you, that's working against you and what you want to accomplish and create in your life? How do you go about breaking that habit so it no longer holds you back? And so how we're going to go about doing this is starting by understanding the science of habits. One of the books that I want to recommend to you is a book by Charles Duhigg called The Power of Habit. And it starts to describe to you some of the science behind habits, as well as some of the ways that corporations have incorporated the science into how they run their businesses. One of the critical things to start looking at when you start to look a bit more deeply into your habits is what Charles Duhigg describes or names the habit loop. The habit loop is how our brain actually performs a routine. How does it get registered in our brain? And it has three main areas. Every habit starts with a cue. It's a message to our brain to say, okay, this is happening, time to get into whatever the habit or routine is. Step number 2 is actually the action of the habit or routine. What is it that you're doing in this habit? That comes right after the cue. And lastly, the habit loop always ends with some kind of reward. After you have been, your brain recognizes the cue, you perform the habit, there is a reward. And so as we start looking at how you can start introducing new habits as well as breaking some old habits, the first step is for you to look at what is the cue? What happens right before I get into this habit that represents the cue to my brain that it's time to move into action, into that particular habit that you have. And there are 5 main categories for those cues. It's location, where are you right before you do the habit? The time, what time is it? Is it happening at a consistent time during the day? Are there any other people around? Who else is around you? Is there someone who is starting to be a cue or something, some kind of interrelationship with someone that becomes a cue for this habit? Emotional state. How are you feeling right before you go into this habit? And immediate action before. Were you doing something before you actually did the habit, performed the habit that has become a cue? So when you choose, what I'd like you to start by doing is selecting a habit that you currently have that you want to change. And I want you to start really thinking about what are some of the possible cues that are priming you to go into action. And look at these 5 categories and start brainstorming what those might be. Then you've got your action, and right at the end, there's a moment of satisfaction, a moment where you kind of feel like something has settled. This is an urge that has been satisfied. This is where the reward is. And there are many different possible rewards. Sometimes the first reward you think it might be is not in fact what the reward is. And so I want you to start brainstorming what are some of the rewards attached to this particular habit. I want you to start there, and I'll tell you what to do next time once you've figured out some of the possible cues and rewards to the particular habit that you have. See you next week. Here's a habit I want to get rid of. Help me.